everyone, it's David from David Loves Rock, and I'm joined here today by David Ellefson and Jeff Young from Kings of Thrash, who are about to start a tour, a European tour, but they're going to finish their tour in Belfast, Northern Ireland, in the Voodoo Belfast on September 2nd. David and Jeff, you're of course famous for being Megadeth. David, you were Megadeth's bass player for 30 years. And Jeff, you played for a couple of years, I think on their third album, is that right?
Got out quick.
Yeah. Yes. and then you got together to form Kings of Thrash in 2022. How did that happen?
Well, we really met over, Jeff and I had stayed in touch, right? We did the Megadeth, the VH1 Behind the Music back in, I think it was 2001. So he and I think it probably the first time we'd connected for maybe a decade or so. Fast forward a few years, we're at the NAMM show doing the Ronnie Montrose Remembered event. I look over, I'm on stage left, Jeff was on stage right. We come over, we give a big high five and a hug. So, our paths have crossed. And then, in early 2022, I got involved in the Nick Menza documentary, This Was My Life. And so by way of that, Jeff got involved as well. He helped secure a production studio for us in Hollywood, where we did all of the interviews that you see in the film. I think all of them were done there, most of them anyway. And, we went to the Rainbow that night to have dinner, which is what you do when you're a rocker in LA. So we went down there, and at the end of the night, Jeff started singing a riff to me that I remembered from 1988. And that started us. We went to the studio. We cut 4 ideas, some sketches of songs, and
one of them became Bullets Ready, our latest single.
Yep, exactly. The last one that just came out. So So anyway, this is sort of the general timeline. Jeff invited me out to the
Ultimate Jam at the Whiskey that happens bi-weekly. And since they called me, they were doing every bi-weekly is a different theme. The year after Eddie Van Halen, they did a Van Halen. I did that. They had a Ladies of the 80s, Randy Rhoads Remembered. Then they called me, we're doing the Big Four. You want to do it? And then I said, well, I'm happen to be writing with David. You want to see if he'll fly out from Arizona, which he did. They matched us with Chaz, who was in Woke Up Dead, a Megadeth tribute out of Southern California. And we actually had Mike Heller play drums that evening. The videos are online from David's band, The Lucid. But I happened to see another drummer who played that evening on the Slayer tunes, and his name was Fred Aching. We called him the Peruvian Hammer. And I said, there's our drummer right there. So Kings of Thrash was born by accident and organically out of that Ultimate Jam evening.
According to the internet, and we know it's always right, David, you played on 12 Megadeth studio albums with, and Jeff, you played on 1. I think I've got that right. But with Kings of Thrash, you mainly play songs from the first 3 albums. Is that right? Killing Is My Business, and Business is Good, Peace Sells, But Who's Buying, and So Far So Good, So What? I think that's the one you played on, Jeff. Why those 3 in particular? Particularly you, David, because you've played on 12? Why those 3?
Right. Well, when I was out of the group in 2021, I was at an autograph show called Chiller Theater. It's a big one in New Jersey. And Megadeth had just gone through the area the first time without me on bass in 11 years. By the way, I'd been in the band, I think, 33 years, not 23.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, so it had been a minute. Fans were complaining. They're like, man, it's the same 12 songs. We wish we could hear this stuff. And while I was in the group, I tried to get in fact, I was very close. Me and the management at the time, we were trying to get some old songs into the set. Liar, Hook and Mouth, Black Friday, Bad Omen. I was really reaching. And I kind of knew it wasn't going to happen. There's a thing about, look, when Megadeth started, those were the only songs we had. They were fast, furious, ripping. As the band got bigger, as we started to play bigger halls, theaters, arenas, those songs, those thrashy things don't sound as good. They just don't. So we kind of started writing to the room, if you will, right? Symphony of Destruction, perfect example. Tool On, these kind of things. And explored other things. But to me, these songs were kind of lost in the past, and to me, you reach an age as a group, as an artist, sometimes your best path forward is your past. And while new records make people want to go back and listen to old records, what I saw was in heavy metal, and I see it now in metal church, that there's always a new generation coming. They're down in the front.
There absolutely is.
Yeah, they're with wide-eyed wonder. They're thrashing. They want to. I never met a new fan who said, "Man, I just love the new album." A new fan always says, "I love Peace Sells. I love So Far So Good So What. I love Rest in Peace." And so to me, I just thought it was cool. And one thing that Jeff and I did together that he just sort of took it to task was, especially Killing Is My Business. There's a lot of depth in that record, and because of the speed and the ferociousness, the lack of budget, the lack of time, those songs just got whipped onto tape and turned into combat, and it was whisked out, and there was so much nuance and detail that I think, and I'll let Jeff speak to that, but he took the time to really rip those songs apart like an old car. You rip it apart, you polish it up, you fix the parts that are leaking, and you put it back together a better machine. And so I
So
think
Jeff,
that's
picking that one up, then what would be your favorite song to play live in Kings of Thrash?
There's too many. They're all fun in their own way because they all, challenge different parts of your playing, and they tap into different emotions. And we do focus on a majority of the first three albums and a lot of deep cuts because people love hearing deep cuts that they don't often hear. But we have branched out. We do some Rust in Peace. We've done Euthanasia.
Yeah.
What was Victory? What album's that on?
Victory. Yeah, that was Euthanasia.
Yeah. So we branched out and did a couple other tunes, but we like staying kind of old school.
Who's behind these boots are made for walking?
We had a manager named Jay Jones, and I think it was his idea that we record that. And we obviously sped it up, did a Megadeth style thing. Dave took the liberty to, in jest, tongue in cheek, make some revisions to the lyrics, which was fine for about the first 500,000 copies. And then the writer of the song, Lee Hazelwood, got word of that. And it's funny, it's an interesting stipulation. You can't. There's a line when you re-record a song, it's considered a covered song, right?
Yeah.
But when you start rewriting the lyrics, you can't just sort of reimagine it like that, and without the permission of the author, of the composer, right?
Okay.
So
If you're swearing,
yeah, so we got a cease and desist. So Dave went in. I think it was actually taken off the record for maybe a while. Some copies of it, but then in 2001 we remixed it, remastered it. Dave went in and edited it, and then finally in the final kill he just re-sang it, so that it was the proper lyrics. And funny thing is, I just was with the Sex Pistols last month over here in Cologne, Germany, and Steve Jones, Jeff and I have known him since the So Far So Good So What record, because that's when he came in and played on the album. And I've got to know Glenn Matlock, the bass player, who's an original member, one of the writers of their music. And I took it. I told him right as I was leaving. I said, "Hey, by the way, when we covered Anarchy in the UK, I know the lyrics aren't right. We were so green and so new that we just sat down and wrote what we thought it said when we listened to it, right? We didn't know that we could call Capitol Records and EMI Music Publishing and actually go get the original proper lyrics for us to sing, right? So we kind of did our own version of, and he goes, yeah, it sounded a bit strange, because I remember Johnny Rotten came out and said, that's pure bollocks. And we were so bummed out that our hero, Johnny Rotten, didn't like our version. So anyway, things you learn in the business as you go along,
But you play that live in Kings of Thrash as well, don't you?
We do, yeah. This particular tour, it's kind of back to the start, if you will. When we launched the band, we went out, we played So Far So Good So What and Killing Is My Business, because those were kind of the two gems, the two really hidden gems of the Megadeth catalog, that's yet they were super inspirational to so many people, so many fans, some of our peers, our younger peers who wrote those records. that, you know, we decided on this tour, let's come back over here, do So Far So Good So What. And it's, you know, it's interesting that we're, you know, going to go into the topic here of Belfast and this stuff, because, you know, this is where me and Jeff's journey started, was in the UK. We came over in December of 1987 to play the Leeds, that festival in Leeds. It's where we filmed
Christmas on Earth.
Christmas on Earth. It's where we filmed the footage for the Anarchy in the UK video, was at that show. And then we played our last show together, you know, as Megadeth members in 1988 at Castle Donington.
Oh, wow.
In
What a
August
place
of
to-
1988. Yeah, so in a weird way, we started there, we ended there, and, you know, then our lives took separate paths for a few decades, and, you know, here we are back to kind of revisit the path again. You know,
I just come from a school governors meeting, and I was telling the folks there that what was going to be doing later on, and one lady in particular, Lynn, is a massive Megadeth fan. And she was telling me the kind of outfit she wore back in the day in 1988. She didn't go to that particular concert. She was too young. I think she was 15 at the time. I think she said, but she was a massive Megadeth fan, and still is. So, you know, you mentioned this earlier, David, but Jeff, for you, you know, what does it feel like to have both young and old people coming to your concerts, discovering the new music, the new tracks you've done. You mentioned earlier, Bullets Ready and Lockdown, but also the old as well.
It's amazing because sometimes you'll see 3 generations of family coming to a show, and the kids have a So Far So Good So What T-shirt. I'm like, where'd you get that? You weren't even thought in your parents' head at that time.
That's right.
But it's incredible, and that's really what Kings of Thrash is about. It's about the nostalgia and the reminiscence. And it's, you know, we've all seen those memes floating around that a song can take you back to a moment in time.
Yep.
Like no other memory, and you're just right there back in the moment. So, you know, and it's doing that not just for the people showing up to hear the show. It's doing it for us, man. This is a good way to keep an old man young.
Yep.
Or in my case, a young man younger.
So let's take you back to I think it was 1988, and when I think it was maybe your first time in Northern Ireland, you played the Antrim Forum, and of course that was do you remember that night by any chance? My question
I have a photographic memory. I remember everything.
Without getting
it's a blessing and a curse.
Yeah, without getting political. But my question is, what are your recollections? And also, did you get a police escort all the way to Dublin for your concert the next evening? Because that's the word on the street.
by the way, we switched sides because the sun was coming in. We didn't know in Trondheim, Norway, the sun would still be up at freaking 8 o'clock at night.
It's 8:15 in Norway, and the sun's right up there. It's going to be light on you.
You're an hour ahead of me. You're an hour
There we
ahead
go.
of me.
That was a quick
Yes,
little shining
Antrim
spider
Forum.
girl.
Yeah, Antrim Forum.
So yeah, okay, so I figured between the two of us, we can get 2 of the 3 sides of the story together here. So there's been one story told. You know, okay, here's what I remember. Unless you want to go first.
All I remember is there was a bomb threat, and they cleared the building, and we had to stop the show and come back in. And the other thing I remember, when we arrived in Belfast, first time I ever saw tanks cruising around in a city square. But the biggest thing I remember was the bomb threat, and we stopped the show for a while. Then they found it was a false alarm. We came back and finished the show. But I want to say before closing, Belfast on our last tour was my favorite show of the whole. We were here a month in Europe. That was my favorite show, so I can't wait to get back and play.
Was this as Kings of Thrash or of Kings of Thrash? And where was that concert?
I don't know. It was a venue that it was like a big industrial building, and it had like 3 venues inside.
Multiple venues inside. And we did Thin Lizzy Cold Sweat that night. I know that's on YouTube, the Belfast version someone posted.
I should have checked that. I do apologize. Well then, just on from that. So Dave Mustaine, as I went on record, saying he regretted the whole incident, I should say. And you guys came back as Megadeth and played Northern Ireland several times since. And I believe that incident inspired the song Holy Wars, The Punishment Due, which is, according to the internet, widely considered to be one of Megadeth's greatest songs. Will you be playing that as Kings of Thrash on September 2nd?
We
No.
play that. We don't play that.
We have played that. We have played that, but it's not in this run. It's
That's
so
okay.
hard. We have so many songs. I mean, we've got like 4 albums in our canon, so it's so hard to pick and choose the songs we want to do. You know,
Well,
there's
listen,
only so much time in an evening. So there's been so many nights when we end up with playing almost 2 hours. And
well,
sometimes the venues, you know, they have a curfew.
they do indeed, and they certainly do here as well. Well, speaking of busy, David, you're a very busy man. You're involved in other bands. You formed the Lucid, Death, and you've also recently joined Metal Church. I believe you're playing with them in the last few days. You've also founded Ellefson Films, Ellefson Music Productions, Ellefson Books Company. Do you ever get bored?
No, I'm pretty ambitious.
He doesn't have time to get bored.
You know, right after we played Donington, after that year, about a year and a half later, you know, I got clean from an old lifestyle, and
Right.
that, you know, that has really been the change for me. You know, was to just sort of be restored back to my youthful ambition, you know, of when I was 11 years old, listening to Kiss and Sweet and BTO and Styx and Foreigner, and a bass guitar landed in my lap, and that just was my only ambition in life was that. So, you know, at age 25 to get the reset button on that has been really that's it. I mean, that's the driving force, because it took all those other obstacles out of the way, you know.
Excellent.
That's you
Excellent.
know, and look, I'm not an anti-party guy. People can party, do whatever they want, but for me, I just found that when I cleaned my life up, I got a lot more focus. You know, my friend Al Petrelli, he told me in 2002, you know, he became a good musical friend of mine. You know, he's an educated musician. I just saw him with Sabotage last week over in Germany, and you know, he's like a lot of people in my life, one of my best friends, even if we only talk or see each other a couple times a year. It's like it's as if we were hanging out yesterday, you know. And he's the one who told me, he goes, David, just say yes to things, you know. And that's because I was scared. I was in one band for 20 years. Since I was 18 years old, I was in Megadeth, and then finally at age 38 it disbands. And I'm like, now what do I do? You know, I had a lot of responsibilities and bills to pay, and suddenly all that faucet was completely turned off on all of us, you know. So at that point, I had to relearn how to live my life, and you know, as all, you know, we don't grow from when things are great. We grow when things get tough. You know, that's just a fact of life, and we
Yep.
can enjoy when times are good, like they are now, but. You know, so it's those transitions, and in fact, you know, Jeff and I got to be in the band during a really fun period, but it was also a period where I think, you know, if we're honest with ourselves, we knew there was signs saying bridge out ahead. You know what I mean? Because the lifestyle, you know, just everything that was going on at that point, and you know, by the time we turned the corner into the '90s, that lifestyle was no longer acceptable, even in rock and roll.
David, you talked there about just saying yes, and of course, one thing you said yes to is related to what you're wearing on your T-shirt. You were called to take part in Back to the Beginning last year.
Yeah.
I mean, unbelievable. What was that like?
Well, it was fantastic, and I was certainly humbled and honored to be there. KK Downing sent me a message about it. He
Right.
invited me there, and because Tom Morello was the musical director
Yeah.
of that,
Yeah.
and like Ken said, KK said, he goes, you know, Tom is putting together this Judas Priest film with Banger Films, I think. So they're putting that together. I think they've been going around to some film festivals. So, you know, KK is a really kind guy. He's kind of, in a way, a David Ellefson of Judas Priest. You know, he's a founding member. He's
Yep.
been there from the beginning. He's
Right.
obviously one of the you know, the pillars that guys like Jeff and I growing up. You know, KK with that flying V, that, you know, that just made all of us want to be a rock star. You know what I mean? It's just so
Yeah.
on the cover of Unleashed in These. But you know, and he's and then he's had his own journey now on his own. So I relate. You know, I think that's where KK and I we relate in a lot. He and I got to share the stage at his steel mill in 2019, I think it
Great
was.
venue. Great venue.
Yeah, that helped, you know, kind of got him inspired, and then he
Yep.
started KK's Priest, and on he went. So I just love those paths when you know, it's like Jeff and I got to reconnect for many years and revisit stuff that we had done before. We got to do it our way on our terms. I think
It's better, more mature musicians.
Exactly. So I love that when those connections come around and you get to reconnect with, friends old and new, and you get to, with guitars in hand, change other people's lives for the better through your music. It's a cool gift.
Well, listen, we'll wrap this up. Jeff and David, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. Kings of Thrash are on tour right now and are playing in Belfast in the Voodoo on Wednesday, September 2nd, 2026, as in a few weeks. And I hope to see you all there.
Yes. Awesome, David. Thanks, buddy.